Science may be described as the art of systematic oversimplification. The history of science, like the history of all human ideas, is a history of irresponsible dreams, of obstinacy, and of error. All life is problem-solving. The more we learn about the world, and the deeper our learning, the more conscious, specific, and articulate will be our knowledge of what we do not know. True ignorance is not the absence of knowledge, but the refusal to acquire it. The growth of knowledge depends entirely on disagreement. A theory that explains everything explains nothing. It is not the possession of truth, but the success which attends the seeking after it, that enriches the seeker and brings happiness to him. The open society is one in which men have learned to be to some extent critical of taboos, and to base decisions on the authority of their own intelligence. The enemy of the open society is no longer the communist, but the person who wants to preserve his faith in some infallible doctrine. I do not believe in God, but I believe that the concept of God is a valuable one. The best thing that can happen to a human being is to find a problem, to fall in love with that problem, and to live trying to solve that problem, unless another problem even more lovable appears. The most exciting phrase to hear in science, the one that heralds new discoveries, is not eureka, but that's funny. Every intellectual has a very special responsibility. He has the privilege and the opportunity of studying. In return, he owes it to his fellow men, or to society, to represent the results of his study as simply, as clearly, and as modestly as he can. Insofar as a scientific statement speaks about reality, it must be falsifiable, and insofar as it is not falsifiable, it does not speak about reality. I may be wrong and you may be right, and by an effort, we may get nearer to the truth. There is no history of mankind. There are only many histories of all kinds of aspects of human life, and one of these is the history of political power. This is elevated into the history of the world. The game of science is, in principle, without end. He who decides one day that scientific statements do not call for any further test, and that they can be regarded as finally verified, retires from the game. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. We are social creatures to the inmost center of our being. The notion that one can begin anything at all from scratch, free from the past, or unindebted to others, could not conceivably be more wrong. The pursuit of truth is a very great ideal indeed. The logic of scientific discovery is a logic of situation. The belief in a political utopia is especially dangerous. The problems of society will also be the problems of the dominant philosophy. Without a free press, there can be no free society. The whole problem of the structure of society is unsolved, and I have a deep sympathy with those who confront it. Science is not a system of certain or well-established statements, nor is it a system which steadily advances towards a state of finality. We must make use of conjecture in all our thinking, and never confuse it with belief. Optimism is a duty. The knowledge of our ignorance is the first step to the knowledge of all. The demand for certainty is one which is natural to man, but is nevertheless an intellectual vice. It is impossible to speak in such a way that you cannot be misunderstood. Every intellectual revolution which has ever stirred humanity into greatness has been a passionate protest against inert ideas. There are no shortcuts to moral insight. The only thing that we can know is that we know nothing, and that is the highest flight of human wisdom. I think that there is only one way to science, or to philosophy, for that matter, to meet a problem, to see its beauty and fall in love with it, to get married to it and to live with it happily, till death do you part. We all remember how many religious wars were fought for a religion of love and gentleness, how many bodies were burned alive with the genuinely kind intention of saving souls from the eternal fire of hell. There is no history of mankind. There are only many histories of all kinds of aspects of human life. In the course of scientific progress, the principle of authority, the principle of tradition, and many other principles of our social structure are constantly subjected to criticism and in many cases disproved. The knowledge of the fact that it is impossible to know anything completely, that is, in perfect detail, does not justify us in not knowing anything at all. I may be wrong and you may be right, and by an effort, we may get nearer to the truth. The method of science as such is just a method of selection. And the philosophy of science, if it is anything, is a philosophy of preferential selection. The more we learn about the world and the deeper our learning, the more conscious, specific, and articulate will be our knowledge of what we do not know. If we are uncritical, we shall always find what we want, we shall look for, and find, confirmations. And we shall look away from, and not see, whatever might be dangerous to our pet theories. The greatest enemy of anyone, of our truths may be the rest of our truths.